Shrimsha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Ragunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saritam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakanvitam Shcha Hari Om Tat Sat. Manashiksha text 2. Where is that? Some kind of small printing. Nadarmam Shrutingana Niruktam Kila Kuru Raje Radha Krishna Prachura Paricharya Mihatanu Shachi Sunum Nandishvara Patisutatve Guravaram Mukunda Prishtatve Smara Paramajashram Nanumana. Translation. Oh, my dear mind, please do not perform either the routine religious activities resulting in piety or the irreligious activities resulting in sin, adharma, as mentioned in the Shrutis or Vedas. Rather, you should render profuse loving service to Sri Sri Radha Krishna Yugala here in Braja. For the Shrutis have ascertained them to be the highest principle of supreme worship and the supreme absolute truth. Okay. Always meditate on Sachinandana Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is richly endowed with the complexion and sentiments of Srimati Radhika, as non-different from Sri Nandanandana. And always remember the spiritual master as most dear to Sri Mukunda. So in the last verse, we were advised to give up pride, sadadhambam hitwa, and to develop a purvarati, transcendental love for Guru, Brajadam, Brajavasis, Vaishnavas in general, even Brahmanas. The divine mantra given by Guru Dev at the time of Diksha, Sri Harinam and Sri Radha and Krishna. We should develop a purvarati and atitaram kuru. We should do great prayasa for this. There must be great endeavor in developing this love. So question comes, what about the edicts of the Vedic literatures, Dharma and Andharma? Are we not to perform Dharma and Andharma while living in this world? Only we shall do this bhakti yoga? So this question is coming up. In one sense, there's a discussion on adhikara here. Once you develop adhikar for bhakti, then what is the prescribed activity for such a bhakta? Because there should be steadiness according to your adhikar. You understand this verse? Sway adhikare ya nishta saguna parikirtita viparyastu doshasya. Last line I forget. So this verse is saying, the Srimad Bhagavatam, this is Krishna speaking. He says there should be adhikara nishta. Adhikara nishta means there should be steadiness according to one's adhikar. And this steadiness according to one's adhikar, this is true piety. And impiety is just the opposite. What is impiety? Opposite means that when you're not steady, or you're steady according to someone else's adhikar. This is called impiety. So steadiness according to your qualification, that is piety. And steadiness according to some other adhikar is impiety. So in this way, piety and impiety should be ascertained. This is Krishna's own statement to Uddhava in the Uddhava Gita. So when you develop bhakti adhikar, then what should be your nishta? What should be your steadiness if you have adhikar for bhakti? And what is that difference from other adhikars? So this subject matter coming up in Srimad Bhagavatam, 11th canto, at the end of chapter 19, if you go and study it, Uddhava has asked so many questions about the good and bad qualities of things in this world. And after answering many of Uddhava's questions, Krishna concludes the chapter by saying that one should rise above the good and bad, because to see good and bad is itself a fault. So one should rise above good and bad. So this leads to a doubt on the part of Uddhava. If we rise, wrong canto. If we rise above good and bad, then how are we to interface with the Vedic literatures, which are themselves dealing with good and bad subject matter? So he asks these questions. So this is 11th canto, chapter 20. We look at this passage, it's very nice. So first 5 verses of chapter 20, Uddhava is expressing a doubt to Krishna about this. So he says this thing here, Vidishcha pratishedascha nigamo hishwarashite avikshate aravindaksha gunam dosham chakarmana. So my dear lotus eye Krishna, aravindaksha, you are the Supreme Lord, and thus the Vedic literatures consisting of positive and negative injunctions constitute your order. You understand? Vidishcha pratishedascha nigamo hi ishwarasyate. The nigama, the Vedic Shastra, has 2 things in it, vidhi and pratisheda. So vidhi means what you are supposed to do, and pratisheda means what you're not supposed to do. Okay, clear. So your order, so such literatures focus upon the good and bad qualities of work. Avekshite aravindaksha guna dosham chakarmana. So the Vedas, dealing with vidhis and pratishedas, they have a focus on guna and dosha, good qualities of work and the bad qualities of work. So good qualities of work is called piety, that is to be performed, that is called vidhi. And the bad qualities of work that is to be avoided, that is called pratisheda. So that means you just told me to rise above the vision of good and bad, but in order for me to understand what to do in this world, I have to take shelter of the Vedas. And the Vedas themselves are dealing with good and bad. So how can I rise above the vision of good and bad? You understand the question? This is his doubt. So next verse, Krishna says, Varnashrama vikalpam cha prati loma nulomajam dravya deshavaya kala swargam narakamevacha. So according to the Vedic literature, the superior and inferior varieties found in the human social system, Varnashrama, are due to pious and sinful modes of family planning. That's interesting. Varnashrama vikalpam cha. So Varnashrama vikalpa means the divisions in Varnashram and Varna and Ashram. The variety of superior and inferior position. There's a stratification, obviously, in Varnashram culture. Everything is not all one. There's necessity for division of the society. Although this is a very controversial subject matter in the postmodern 2022 age, segregation is powerful because people have different qualities. There's a need for stratification according to their different qualities. So there's a division in Varnashram. Here it's saying according to sinful and pious planning. The word used here is pratiloma and anulomojam. So pratiloma means when a woman of a superior caste, gets together with a man of an inferior caste. That is called pratiloma marriage. And anulomojam means when a man of a superior caste gets together with a woman of an inferior class. So this creates division in the society. Division, not in a variety is a better word than division, because division conveys another idea now. This creates the variety that you see, or the stratification that you see in the Varnashram situation. Is according to how people, the language being used here is family planning, according to how they've basically copulated. Then this division is coming in the society. So he says here, thus, piety and sin are constant points of reference in the Vedic analysis of the components of a given situation, namely the material ingredients, place, age, and time. Indeed, the Vedas revealed the existence of material heaven and hell, which are certainly based on piety and sin. So dravya desha vaya kalan, according to substance, according to place, according to one's age, according to time, there are so many injunctions given for all these things. And also there's talk of Swarga and hell. So by good activities, you get to go to Swarga, and by bad activities, you get to go to hell. So how can I avoid saying good and bad? This is the basic underpinning doubt of Uddhava and all these questions. How can I avoid saying good and bad? When all these points given in the Vedas are concerned with good and bad. That is his point that he's making here. Next verse. You can see I'm looking at 11, 20. We're looking at the first 5 verses. We'll look up to the first 9 here. So Guna dosha bidha drishnam antarena vajastava nishreya samkatam nirnam nisheda vidi lakshana. Without seeing the difference between piety and sin, Guna dosha bidha drishnam, how can one understand your own instructions in the form of the Vedic literatures, which order one to act piously and forbid one to act sinfully? Furthermore, without such authorized Vedic literatures, which ultimately award liberation, how can human beings achieve the perfection of life? So if you don't see the difference between good and bad, guna dosha vidha drishna, if you don't see this difference, then how can you properly engage with the Vedic literatures? The Vedic literatures are dealing with good and bad, and you're saying don't see good and bad. So when I read Vedas only, how can I not see good and bad? This is the point. How will I be able to interface with your instructions? Antarena vachashtava. How will I be able to interface with your words without seeing good and bad? So if you say, well, don't interface with the Vedas, right? So also, Atmanamash Chamunayo, Nigranta, Api Urukrame. So the Atmarama, the one who has realized his soul, he is near Granta. So one of the meanings of near Granta means without books, right? That is one of the meanings of the word near Granta. The word Granta means not. The word Granta also means book. Grantara Srimad Bhagavatam ki Jaya. So the word Granta also means book. So he's near Granta without books. So don't interface with the Vedas. Don't see good and bad and don't interface with the Vedas. But then to that he says, Nishreya Sankatam Nirnam. Nisheda Vidhi Lakshana. That in order to get Nishreyas, ultimate good, that is in the Vedas only. How to get the ultimate good, that is described in the Vedas. Yesterday, I saw one friend, he shared that you don't need church to understand God. You don't need priests to understand God. You don't need a guru to understand God. You don't need, did I say church already? Church to understand God. He said, only thing you need to do to understand God is to go inside. That's what he said. The only thing you need to do to understand God is to go inside. So then I put one question. I said, how do you go inside? Now enters the church and the priest and the guru. If anyone should ask that question, then inevitably this person will come up. Church, priest, guru, influencer. So he said, you don't need any special text to go to know God. So you don't need Srimad Bhagavatam also to know God. You only need to go inside. I said, but if anyone shall ask how to go inside, immediately all these entities enter into the picture. Guru, special text, church, priest, all these entities enter. Inevitably, or influencer. Like, should I accept what you're saying or not? So this, in order to get Shreyas, ultimate good, I have to engage with the Vedas. So you cannot say, hey, Atmarama Shimuna Yotna Granta, hey, even the Atmaramas is not engaged with the Vedas. They're without books. No, for me to get the Shreyas, I need to engage with the Vedas, and the Vedas are dealing with good and bad. Nisheda Vidhi Lakshanam. They have their Vidhis and the Nishedas, right? So how am I supposed to transcend this vision of good and bad if I have to engage with your Vedas, which deals with good and bad? Okay, next verse. Pritre deva manushanam vedas chakshuta veshvara shreyas tanu palabdherte sadhya sadhanayorapi. My dear Lord, to understand those things beyond direct experience, right, such as spiritual liberation or the attainment of heaven and similar material enjoyments, and in general to understand the means and end of all things, it is imperative that the forefathers, demigods, and humans beings consult the Vedic literatures, for these literatures, being your own laws, constitute the highest evidence and revelation. This is a very nice point. So Pitra Deva Manusha now, forefathers, the Devatas, and the human beings, they have to consult the Vedas for understanding things that are beyond immediate sense perception. such as heaven, that's in the case of the humans, or liberation. And also to understand sadhya sadhana yorapi, to understand the means and the sadhana and the end, that also you have to consult the Vedas. Because the Vedas constitute the highest pramana for which all this shreyas can be understood. I like this verse because what is the highest goal in life and what does it mean to attain it? This is one of the seminal questions of Srimad Bhagavatam also. But if you ask yourself this question honestly, just ask this question for yourself. How do you find the answer to this question? What is the highest purpose in life and what does it mean to attain it? Suppose you didn't believe in Srimad Bhagavatam or you didn't get devotee social. How do you answer this particular question? What is the highest purpose in life and what does it mean to attain? This is a seminal question of Srimad Bhagavatam also asked by Shaunaka Rishi and the sages. What is the purpose of life and what does it mean to attain? How do you find the answer to this question? What is the pramana for getting an answer to this question?
So experience, previous experience.
Previous experience. That's it?
Yeah.
Will that give proper answer?
And previous impressions.
Previous impressions, will that give proper answer? So the point here, we're very limited actually to understand this sort of answer to this question. Very extremely limited.
Mm-hmm.
So for that, you need to go to the Vedas also.
Mm-hmm.
To understand what is sadhana, what is sadhya, for that also you have to go to some authority.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, there's too many limitations on our existence for us to have direct understanding what the answer to that question would be.
Mm-hmm.
So in all ways, I have to engage with the Vedic literatures. Vedic literatures is dealing with this good and bad, and you're telling me to rise above good and bad.
Mm-hmm.
So this is my doubt. This is the conundrum that I'm having. So last verse of his doubt, and then we'll see Krishna's answer and how it relates to this Manashiksha, because I haven't forgotten we're discussing Manashiksha. So he just went back to Bhagavatam class. Manashiksha is going on. So this is relevant to the first line of this Manashiksha. Okay. So last verse here, Guna dosha bida drishte nigama te nahi swata nigame na pavadashta bidhaya iti ha brahma. So my dear Lord, the distinction observed between piety and sin comes from your own Vedic knowledge and does not arise by itself. So it's not relative, it's coming from highest authority, that is Krishna. If the same Vedic literature subsequently nullifies such distinctions between piety and sin, there will certainly be confusion, right? So guna dosha bida drishtir, the vision of difference between good and bad. Nigamate nahisvataha. This is coming from the nigamas only, from the Shastra only. So if this is nullified, nigame napavadishta, if this is nullified, the vision of good and bad, which is given in the Vedas, then vidhaya iti brahma. If this distinction is nullified, that is given in the Vedas, that will create Brahma, that will create ignorance or bewilderment. So this is my dilemma, what you're asking me to see beyond good and bad. How do I interface with the Vedas, which deal with transcendental knowledge also? But speaking of this good and bad, if I have to not see good and bad. So now Krishna gives the answer. And this is where the connection to Manashiksha is coming. Krishna says here, Sri Bhagavan Vacha, Yogas Traya Maya Prokta Niranam Shreya Viditsaya Gyanam Karmacha Bhaktishcha No Payo Anyosti Asti Kutrichet. So Krishna is speaking to Uddhava. My dear Uddhava, because I desire that human beings may achieve perfection, I presented 3 paths of advancement. Okay. The path of knowledge, the path of work, and the path of devotion. Besides these 3, there's absolutely no other means of elevation. Okay. Yogas Traya Maya Prokta Niranam Shreya Viditsaya. So Krishna has one desire for humans. What is that? Shreya Viditsaya. He wants to bestow Shreyas upon them. Okay? For bestowing Shreyas upon them, he is given 3 paths, Yogastraya. 3 yogas he is given in order that they may attain Shreyas, okay, ultimate welfare. Have you given any path for prayas? I'm just curious about the prayas also. The prayas means the immediate gratification. Yeah, I like the Shreyas too, but just anything on the prayers. Just out of curiosity. No. I've given 3 paths to bestow Shreyas on these humans. 3, huh? Well, no, in this verse only. First yoga, Jnanam. Second yoga, karma. Third yoga, bhakti. Na upaya anya asti kutrache. Aside from these, there exists no other upaya, no other path for perfection. Okay? So if you want Shreyas in your life, 3 paths are there. Gyan path, karma path, and bhakti path. Okay, next verse. So first he speaks of the first 2 paths in next verse 7. Nirvinanam Jnana Yoga Nyasinam Iha Karmasu. So Nirvinana means for those who are disgusted with karma, and they renounce karma in this world, then they are qualified for Jnana Yoga. Okay. When you are disgusted with karma, you are disgusted. Anyone here disgusted with the karma? So the next verse, next part of the line, Teshra Nirvana Chittanam, and for those whose consciousness basically is anirvana. Anirvana means not disgusted with karma. Then karma yogas to kamina. Then for them, karma yoga is the path. So for those who still, kamina means they still have desire for material happiness. They are not disgusted with the material objects. Then for them, karma yoga. So the adhikar for Jnana Yoga is discussed. Nirvinana. The adhikar for Karma Yoga, I still want to enjoy.
Yeah.
Next verse.
What is thinking like Nyasinam there?
Nyasinam means renounce. Because they are disgusted with material objects. Nyasinam means they renounce the world of karma. Because of their disgust. So they have adhikar to do the renunciation. If you renounce without being disgusted with the material world, then you're gonna be in trouble. That's when the hand reaches for the cookies in secret, and then you get busted. You understand? Krishna calls such a person a pretender in Bhagavad Gita. So externally you renounce, but inside you meditate on the sense objects. He says such a person a pretender. So disgust is the adhikar for a path of Jnana. You renounce the world. And if you are desiring to enjoy and you're not disgusted, then path the karma yoga. Next verse is for bhakti yoga now. This is where the connection to Manashiksha come in. Finally, a return to the subject matter at hand. Yadritchaya mukatado jatta shradas tu yapuma. Nanirvinno nati sakto bhakti yoga asya siddhidha. If somehow or other, Yadritchaya, so that somehow or other refers to sadhu sangha. How does it somehow or other? If somehow or other you get sadhu sangha, you get the association of pure devotees. And one develops faith in hearing and chanting my glories. So if you get sadhu sangha, what happens? Makatado jatta shradas tu yapuma. One person who is developing the jatta shraddha, faith is born. Faith in what? Makatado, my topics, Krishna speaking. Then you have adhikar for bhakti yoga. Bhakti yoga asya siddhida. You have bhakti yoga. You should achieve perfection through bhakti yoga. Understand? Now nirvinna, not tisakto. This is a secondary characteristic of having this faith in bhakti. That you are not too disgusted and you're not too detached. So if you're too disgusted, then you have adhikar for Jnana Yoga. If you're attached, you have adhikar for Karma Yoga. But if you get association of bhaktas, they create this situation where you're not too disgusted, you're not too detached. If you're too disgusted, you can't do bhakti yoga because you have to interface with the nature to offer things to Krishna. But if you're too disgusted, how you'll do that? And if you're too attached, you'll enjoy before offering to Krishna. So also a problem in bhakti yoga. But if you get association of devotees, you're not too attached, you're not too detached. And that is born of the faith in Harikatha. So you have adhikar for bhakti yoga. Okay? All right, one other verse. I think this is the last verse in the sequence that we'll cover. So tavat karmani kurvita nanirvidyeta yavata. So long as there's nanirvidyeta, you have not been satiated. Satiated means you had enough with this matter stuff. Enough. The ability to say, this is enough. I've been puna charvita charvana for too many lifetimes now. Showing that which has already been truth. Just like when we were growing up, maybe you all have experience. We would be in the classroom and they would have the bubble gum.
Yeah.
And you ask, hey, can I have one? And they say, I only have ABC gum. And you say, oh, I'll take the ABC gum, not knowing what, first time. And they take the gum out of their mouth and give it already been chewed gum. Here you go, ABC gum. You didn't know. They did. So like this, they do in the West. So that's disgusting, right? So that is a qualification. Ugh. Enough of this matter stuff. Now enough of this. So long as that yuck thing hasn't come, so that yuck thing should come. Enough with this karma. So long as that hasn't come, tabat karmani kurvita. So that long, one should execute karma. So karma means the world where you're, the life where you're informed by the vidis and nishedas of the Vedas. So long as that hasn't come, that long you should do karma, which is based on the vidis and the nishedas of the Vedic literatures. Understand? So nanirvidyeta here is actually a reference to Gyan. So if you get Gyan, so Gyan means then you don't have to do karma. But if that yuck thing hasn't come, then you have to do karma. Or va means or makatado shavanado va shraddha yava najayate. Or so long as shraddha and harikatha, hearing, chanting, etc., is not awakened, then tava, that long you should also do karma. So what this verse is saying that if you don't get Gyan Adhikar or Bhakti Adhikar, then you are obliged to karma marg or karma yoga, where you have to be concerned with the vidis and nishedas of the karmic literatures. But if you get Gyan Adhikar, which is nirvinanam, yach, doesn't matter, or you get faith and harikatha, then you are not obliged to karma marg and obliged with the good and bad of the Vedas. Then you just do bhakti yoga. So just a quick recap, the qualification is based on attachment. So if you have attachment to matter due to beginningless ignorance, then you have adhikar for karma marg. If you have detachment from matter due to purifying the antakarna through karma yoga, nishkama karma yoga specifically, and you develop gyan by which you become to the matter, then you have adhikar for gyan marg. And if you're not too detached, but you're just having faith in harikatha, allowing that faith to guide your activities, then because of that attachment to harikatha, then you have adhikar for bhakti yoga. Now you should act according to your adhikar. So that was the verse I opened up with. Sway adhikaraya nishta saguna parikirtita, right? Piety, true piety is when you are steady according to your adhikar. So do you have karma adhikar, gyan adhikar, or bhakti adhikar? What type of adhikar do you have?
Mixture of all of them.
Mixture of all of them. No, but you have to glorify your guru and say, I have bhakti adhikar. You should say confidently. Otherwise, where is guru's mercy? Just like these great big fellows, they always say like this, there are no pure devotees. So then I always said that, are you saying Prabhupada was not successful? Because Prabhupada writes in his preface of Bhagavad Gita, if I can make only one pure devotee, I would consider my whole mission successful. He writes like that. So I used to, when I was a younger devotee and I had more argumentative spirit, and I would run into the Rivix at the Rath Yatra Festival. LA, especially they would be there at LA. They go everywhere, but especially LA. So I made an argument like this, that are you saying Prabhupada was unsuccessful? It was obviously a loaded question. They call these as loaded questions, where if you give the answer, you'll be destroyed. It's a loaded question. So they claim so much devotion to Prabhupada. So I said, so you say Prabhupada is not successful. You cannot create even one pure devotee. He's therefore not successful. So you have to glorify your guru, that's what I'm saying. So you should say, yeah, I have bhakti adhikar. That's what I'm saying. They'll say like this, that, oh, no, I have all the mix. I have no adhikar. Then they say, where is your guru? Has no Shakti then. No, my guru has all the Shakti. Oh, you can say that my guru has all the Shakti I have not received. But actually we say, no, I have Bhakti Adhikar. Now, where on the Adhikar within Bhakti? So that may be very low. But my Guru Dev is definitely giving me Bhakti Adhikar. So you have Bhakti Adhikar, that you should be studying according to your Adhikar. You should not be studying according to another's Adhikar. So to be preoccupied with the vidis and nishedas of the Vedas, that is for those who have karma adhikar, right? They don't have jnana or bhakti adhikar. You understand?
Yeah.
Now within that adhikar bhakti, we know there's Vaidhi bhakti and there's also Raganuga bhakti. So for Vaidhi bhakti, you have to follow the Vedic injunctions, right? But how do you follow the Vedic injunctions in Vaidhi bhakti? Smartavya satatam Vishnu. Smartavya na jatuchit. Nidhi. What is in that third line? Vismartavya na jatuchit. Sarva vidhi nishedasur. Etayareva kankara. So always to remember Krishna, that is the vidhi. And never to forget Krishna, that is nisheda. The prescription is to always remember Krishna. The prohibition is never to forget him. And this way you have to follow the Vedic injunctions. This is in Vaidhi Bhakti. You understand? Sri Vishwanath says something a little discouraging here. He says, if you forget Krishna, it's like breaking all the prohibitions in Vedas. And he says, if you remember Krishna, it's like following all the prescriptions in Vedas. So in Vaidhi Bhakti, that is how we follow the nigamas. We don't concern ourselves so much with the direct vidis and nishedas of the Vedas, but rather we follow the principle of always remembering Krishna and never forgetting him. And that way, all the vidis and nishedas are honored. Now in Raganuga Bhakti, what is the adhikar for that? So the adhikar is for lobha. Right? In lobha, you just engage in life of Krishna smarana and Krishna katha also. Okay, now having put all these pieces together, let us look at the first line of the Manashiksha verse here. So going back here. So he says here, na dharma, na adharma, shrutigana niruktam kilakaru. Do not perform either the routine religious activities resulting in piety, dharma, or the religious activities resulting in sin, adharma, as mentioned in the Shrutis or Vedas. Now you understand this line? Na dharma, na adharma, shrutigana niruktam kilakuru. So don't do dharma and adharma that is mentioned in the Shrutis. Why you don't do dharma and adharma mentioned in the Shrutis? Because you don't have adhikar for that. That is the point. Because you don't have adhikar for that, so you should be studying according to your adhikar. So what is your adhikar?
Bhakti adhikar.
Yeah, bhakti adhikar. So then Vaidhi bhakti adhikar, Raganuga bhakti adhikar. But you should work according to your adhikar. So you should not be preoccupied with the good and bad that is mentioned in the Vedas. Right. So sometimes devotees, we in our movement even, we get, first of all, we don't study Vedas. This is the first issue. So we actually don't know what the Vedas say. Honestly, we don't know. We're not read Vedas, we don't know Vedas. But then we become overly concerned with speaking about good and bad that is mentioned in Vedic or Vedic culture, we often say. And Vedic culture this, and Vedic culture that. I'm always kind of challenging, how do you know what Vedic culture is doing? You neither lived in the Vedic culture, and neither do you know what Vedic culture is in a full sense, just by reading Srimad Bhagavatam. Bhagavatam is concerned with the stories of bhaktas and how their bhakti unfolded, of course, in the Vedic culture. But the Vedic culture point is just a peripheral part of what you hear in Srimad Bhagavatam. It's not the main substance of the Bhagavatam. So you can only make out a little bit what's going on in Vedic culture just by reading Srimad Bhagavatam. So you don't know what is actually good and bad in the full sense, in the Vedic sense. Vedic sense means you study Vedas, and which deal with all these things in great intricacy, dharma and adharma. So here we're being instructed in Manashiksha, don't concern yourself with that. You should concern yourself according to your adhikar. So you have bhakti adhikar, you should concern yourself with arranging your life in such a way that you can always remember Krishna and never forget him. And that way all the vidis and the nishedas of the Vedas will be honored also. That is what you should concern yourself with.
Mm-hmm.
Well, here he's saying, don't concern yourself with Dharma and Dharma of the Vedas because you have Bhakti Adhikar. So what should I do then? Because I have to live. So Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakur in his commentary, he brings this up also. That I have to live. So what should I do? Next line says, Braje Radha Krishna Pachura Paricharya Mihatana. So the word paricharya means upasana. So we already said upasana means worship of the Lord, or paricharya means offering the Lord various wonderful things like ornaments, like in deity worship and so on, you offer various wonderful things. So Braje Radha Krishna Pachura Paricharya Mihatana. So you should do upasana of Radha Krishna here in Braja. You should worship Radha Krishna here in Braja. Now, of course, as we mentioned in the very first classes, that this is according to this, all these verses are for ideally for the Raganuga Sadhaka. So to do paricharya or upasana of Radha Krishna here in Braja means a second instruction in Raganuga Bhakti. Seva Sadhaka Rupena, Siddha Rupena Chatrihi, Ta Bhava Lipsuna Karya, Brajaloka Anusarita. We should follow the Ragatmika Brijbasis and Gaura Lila and also in Krishna Lila. You should render seva to them. So in Gaura Lila, you render seva in your Sadhaka Rupa. That's the body right now. And then your contemplative life, you're rendering service to Krishna in the Siddha Rupa in the Chatri. We've discussed these verses a little bit and I elaborate, but this is how you do Radha Krishna Upasana. So one question is being brought up here by Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Maybe we'll stop here after this. But he brings up this question that if we're to exclusively focus all of our energy on just worship and contemplation of Radha Krishna in Braja, what does that mean for all the other activities that we do in life? Mm-hmm. Now that question, he brings up this question because we have so many activities that have to go on. So how do we integrate that part if this is all we have to be preoccupied with? That's actually a good question. Of course, and some of the more traditional, what is known as traditional rock marked paths in Vrindavan, they say that this Raganuga Bhajan is only possible for renunciates. They say like this. So if you're not a renunciate, you can't actually be on the rock mark. They say like this, they have conviction. It's kind of like Mayavas. And Mayavad, in order to be a true Mayavad, you have to take sannyas. Otherwise, you're not Mayavad. Just like so many people in America say, I follow Advaita Vedanta while they're holding the hands of their girlfriend. No, you have to be sannyasi to be true Mayavadi. So these rock mark people say like this also, that sometimes these traditional, unless you take renouncement, you cannot do rock mark. So this question is being brought up by Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Well, how about the other aspects of our life? So you just make simple point. There's one nice verse is different from Srimad Bhagavatam. Let me pull it up. But Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur makes one simple point, that whatever aspects you do, whatever activities you do to conduct your life, those should all be done for the pleasure of Krishna. So that is how you integrate your practical activities in the worship of Radha and Krishna. I'll just share this one verse here in this regard, and then we're going to pause here and finish this verse tomorrow. Srimad Bhagavatam, also 11th canto, they have all the good verses. This is verse number 2, and I think chapter 2, the verse number is, let me see here, this one, 36. I'll just read translation. In accordance with the particular nature one has acquired in conditioned life, whatever one does with body, words, mind, senses, intelligence, or purified consciousness, one should offer to the supreme thinking, this is for the pleasure of Lord Narayana. Understand? You have some swabhava, you're doing something with your body, mind, words, with that swabhava. So whatever you're doing, you should say, at least at the end of the day, that this is for the pleasure of my Ishtadev.
Is this word, Haripasha was this word?
He also quoted this verse, I think.
The Aropita Bhakti.
This is a Aropa Siddha Bhakti. Sri Vishnu gives a nice comment here. I'll just read a part of it. This our devotees quote they quote the commentaries of all the acharyas here. This one is good though. So Sri Vishnu has written this. he is given a nice description of how one should offer one's ordinary activities to the Supreme Lord. He says that an ordinary sense gratifier begins his activities in the morning by passing stool and urine, cleaning his mouth, brushing his teeth, bathing, meeting his friends and family members, and discussing with them the day's business. In this way, one has so many activities during the day, and the sense gratifier executes all these activities for his personal material enjoyment. Understand? Mm-hmm. A karmi, on the other hand, working under the jurisdiction of the karma khan of the Vedas, will perform the same activities for the pleasure of the demigods and his forefathers.
It's a high standard.
Thus, according to Sri Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, a devotee of the Supreme Lord Narayana should similarly perform all his daily activities for the pleasure of the Supreme Lord. And this way, everything we do through the day will become bhaktyanga, or a supplementary aspect of our devotional service to Krishna. Mm-hmm. So Srila Bhagavatam Thakur has brought this in, that otherwise it's saying just surrender everything on Radha Krishna. What about so many activities that are due to the swabhava that I have, that also should be done for the pleasure of Krishna? Kind of opposite the bhakti ideas there. So he's brought this thing the day here. So we're going to pause here. The first line is being very clear that don't be attached to the dharma or dharma of the Shruti Gana Niruktam, because you don't have adhikar for that. That is the answer to that, because you don't have adhikar. So you should act according to your adhikar. Maybe you have Vaidhi Bhakti adhikar, or you have Raghunaga Bhakti adhikar. So according to that adhikar, you should act. And therefore, leaving aside the good and bad mentioned in the Vedic edicts as such, because you're following a higher order given by the Supreme Lord, then you should engage all your time in Upasana and Radha Krishna. Of course, this is because it's for the Rak Sadhika. And you should do that living in Braj, of course. They keep bringing in that point, so we don't forget. If you're going to live in Braj practically, then you should live in Braj in your mind. Put Braj paintings on your wall. Call the different parts of your house something from Vrindavan. And that way, try to create a space where you can mentally live there in Braj. Okay, we're going to pause there and finish the verse. Maybe not tomorrow. I'm going back to New York tomorrow. And I don't think I'll make it back to the Bhakti Center in time. I'm leaving early in the morning, but I don't think I'll make it back to Bhakti Center in time. So we have to pick up on Friday. Okay, so it looks like there's some questions here or some comments in the chat box. So is Sri Uddhava saying that bad family planning is at the root of inequality of society? Yeah, because you're using the word pratilama, anulama. No, so these things are natural. They're unavoidable. The point is, though, that the stratification, I always say this, Varnashram culture they had a program of eugenics. It was natural eugenics. So Brahmanas should mix with Brahmanas, Kshatriyas should mix with. They were very much concerned about this sort of progeny that they were producing, and saying that every aspect of the social body was critical for the function of the entire social body. Eugenics was like a very important part of the program. Therefore, you see this in other cultures also. There were laws. I don't know if I'm saying this word right, but the word is miscegenation. I may be saying it wrong. M-I-S-genation. Anyway, I don't remember how this even spelled. There's a word. The miscegenation means mixing of races. So there were laws in practically every country where this was disallowed. Actual laws. It was illegal. Because every culture was concerned about producing a certain type of progeny. So it's a natural eugenics program. Now, the word eugenics has become related to Hitler, so it's become, it's become connected to extermination. So when you use the word eugenics, it has a sort of negative connotation now. But every culture actually had like a natural eugenics program where you only mix with persons in the same category as you to produce that sort of child, which is important for the healthy function of the social body. You want all aspects of the social body to be healthy, the head, the arms, the legs, and the feet. Otherwise, suppose you have a body with no feet, those problems, a little difficult. Suppose you have a body with no arms, a little challenging. So you want a healthy social body, you want all the aspects to be there. So in this way, they would do the eugenics program, natural eugenics. So here, family planning, it's natural. You say, is family planning at the root of inequality of society? Yes, absolutely. But that is not taken as a negative. It is taken as a necessity for the healthy function of any social body. Suppose you have only Brahmanas in a society.
Mhm.
Then that is Krita Yuga, Satya Yuga.
Mhm.
They weren't even Brahmanas, they were all Paramahamsas.
Mhm.
This Varnashram thing actually appears in Treta Yuga.
Mhm.
That's when the inequality starts to really come up. And that's okay. That's healthy. That is important for a healthy function of society. So, yeah, bad family planning. It's not just bad family planning. Even good family planning is at the root of inequality of society also.
Mhm.
Both is required. And Harisham says, so Krishna is saying that adhikar to go beyond sin and piety is to either be detached from matter or have attachment for Harikatha. Yes. So you have detachment for matter, like the Gyanis, or you have attachment Harikatha, then you can go beyond good and bad. For those of us who are attached to Harikatha, there's one very nice verse there from Srimad Bhagavatam 10:87-40. I didn't learn this verse because I relearned this verse. I used to know it. This verse is such an important verse for devotees to meditate on, though. 10:87. Hold on, I'm pulling it up. Okay, sorry. So this verse. Yes. I'll just read the English here. When a person realizes you, he no longer cares about his good and bad fortune, arising from past pious and simple acts, since it is you, the Lord, alone who controls this good and bad fortune. Such a realized devotee also disregards what ordinary living beings say about him. Every day he fills his ears with your glories, which are recited in every age by the unbroken succession of Manu's descendants, and thus should become his ultimate salvation. So if you attach to Harikatha, you also go beyond good and bad. Because you say whatever good and bad, that is in the hands of the Lord. My business is just to focus on Harikatha. Mm-hmm. So in both cases, you can go beyond the good and bad vision that is required when you're, conditioned by the body concept of life. Okay, Sham Gopi, I think says, Hari Prashapa said for Uttama Bhakti definition has two hidden words, Krishnartham and Krishna Sambandhi. So I was thinking about that last section from Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, do everything for Krishna, right? Nice reflection. And Harisham says, even our self-growing plants should be for the pleasure of Krishna. Self-growing plants, not sure what that means.
Remember I was asking that question to Hari Parshad, and I was like, yeah, it's not like we're farmers and the plants are just growing and we can read and chant all day. And he was making fun of me, saying like plants don't grow on their own. And we grow on their own.
Oh yes, okay. Okay, right. This right, okay, so Harisham also says, this phrase, acting according to our adhikar, is a bit confusing. It seems to indicate that we have the right to choose how we act in this world. We do, but isn't the way we are already living and behaving symptomatic of our adhikar? Sure. Thing is, so this is called Niyamagraha and the Upadeshamrita also. This is considered one of the destroyers of bhakti. So Niyama Agraha. So Niyama Agraha means when you're still attached to lower rules, even when you have ability to perform something higher and disregard those rules. Niyama Agraha means where you're not attached enough to the rules on your level and you just disregard them and thus become degraded. So sometimes what happens in devotional, circles is that even if they get bhakti adhikar, which means they have faith in Harikatha, they still feel themselves obliged to some of the edicts of karma. And that may sometimes work as a boundary for them making further progress. This is called as Niyama Agraha. So, of course, Srimad Bhagavatam Thakur has also covered this a little bit in his Manashiksha commentary as well. So this becomes like a boundary for making further progress because you're attached to, I'm trying to think of a good example of how this plays out, like a practical example of how this plays out. Like being obliged to various family obligations. I was trying to avoid that particular one because that one is a little bit sensitive. And I'm trying to think of another one, but I can't think of another example. That's like practical, like something that it could be real experience. Yeah, just like sometimes people remain super attached to family obligation, that they sometimes lose their bhakti because of it. I don't know how else, yeah, I remember when I first joined, there was one young man who joined almost the same time that I did. We were learning how to offer food together. We were doing everything together, bhakti. He had one wife, so she was a Catholic. And probably she didn't even care about Catholicism until he became a devotee. Now all of a sudden her Catholicism became a very important thing. So she just gave him an ultimatum that you either give up Krishna or you give up this marriage and follow Jesus. So he chose his wife also. And then when I saw him, I didn't see him for like months, maybe a year. I didn't see him. Finally, I bumped into him one day. And ever since I was there, maybe distributing books or something, I bumped into him. And I said, hey, where have you been? I haven't seen you so long. What happened? So he told, the wife gave an ultimatum. And he chose the wife. So then I get your point is that, well, if he really had adhikar for bhakti, then he could have just chose bhakti, if that was this like real adhikar. But Rupa Goswami kind of seems to make there's a little nuance there, that you do have the ability to apply yourself to a higher principle, but you remain attached to some sort of something else lower. Maybe status quo, maybe other inferior edicts, you remain attached to that. And as a result of that, you disallow yourself, you don't give yourself permission to fully embrace what you have adhikar for, and that way you don't grow. Same thing happens in another domain in Krishna consciousness. When devotees start to get some attraction for Krishna consciousness, and they put that attraction before different devotees, and then devotees like smash it. What is this? Don't jump over the guru, this, that, and the other. And as a result of that, they don't give themselves permission to pursue their attraction in Krishna consciousness. And as a result, they lose it. Lose it in the sense that it gets covered over. It gets obfuscated by the activism of their practical lives. So this may be another case where this plays out. So just because you have adhikar for something, there's still the element of applying your will according to your adhikar. Like you can do this, but that doesn't mean that you will always do it. So there's still a function of applying your will and giving yourself permission to do that. I heard another meaning of the word adhikar is that you can up to this point you can act. Up to this point you can, just like lifting the weights. Sometimes I do they call them deadlifts, deadlifts. So you just lift the weight off the ground with the barbell. Yeah. So I can do maybe up to 250 pounds I can lift, deadlift. If I do 255, I might get a hernia. Even if you add a little bit more, it gets like heavy on the back. So I have adhikar to lift up to 250 pounds. So sometimes I live under that also, but I have adhikar to lift up to that amount. You understand? But that doesn't mean every time I'm going to be lifting up to that amount. And then and sometimes out of laziness, I'm like, okay, I'll just do less today or whatever it is. So just because you have the ability to work up to a particular point doesn't mean you will do it. You still have to apply your will to that. So now you have adhikar, you have faith in Krishna consciousness, but now you still have to apply your will to that. You have to give yourself permission to pursue it. So that doesn't mean you'll always give yourself permission to pursue it.
Hey, Jaya, that was a really beautiful answer. Really, I think you like opened my eyes to something. And I was also thinking about how many times when devotees have to deal with difficult life circumstances, like maybe some problems at work or in their marriage, we take such a organic approach. Even though we have the qualification to take a bhakti approach, we try to like negate the problem or like try to rise above it by just like, yeah, anyways, it's my karma. Do you know what I'm saying? Like we often deal with life's adversities, not from the bhakti approach. The bhakti approach would be like, you know what? I'm just going to chant 64 rounds today and hear like 3 hours of classes. Like I'm just gonna like deal with it that way. I'm not gonna try to like go get counseling, or I'm not gonna like just write out my feelings. I mean, that's all good. I'm not putting that down. I'm really not. I do those things also. I get mentorship and I write things down and like journal and gratitude and all that. It's wonderful, but when it becomes like the solution versus the anga of my solution, the anga, or the, you know what I'm saying? It's not the solution. It's just a supportive solution. The main solution is I'm just gonna chant a lot, hear a lot. I'm gonna refocus on my sadhana. You know what I'm saying? Like. Yeah, so it's a really beautiful answer you gave.
No, that's a good point. Yeah, devotees, because here in Ypsilanti, Siddhari's been attached to He wants that magic approach to Krishna consciousness. You get that glass and boom, prema. So every time we get a verse where it says like, he said, look, see, it says it here. And I said, okay, if we're around during Mahaprabhu's time, you get a glance, you get prema. Now Mahaprabhu's gone, it's back to sadhana bhakti. Or we have to apply our will. That always is going to be a part of the formula. So there's so much grace that's coming for sure, but still this is the critical element, it's our will. So you may have adhikar, but you still have to apply yourself.
But
Okay,
Prabhu,
Athena. Athena has some question. We haven't heard from Athena in a while.
Hare Krishna, JJP, Dandavat Pranam. Hi,
Very well.
and I've missed you guys so much. So actually on this topic, it's just very interesting. I'm trying to let it marinate more how that the adhikar is really attachment marks. And for some reason, that's just not, I guess, landing for me because we've talked about how the adhikar for bhakti is shraddha.
Right.
And I wonder if maybe the attachment is what precedes shraddha. It's how we practice, then we build shraddha to practice bhakti. But ultimately, isn't it also just our sukriti? Like, but you need bhakti sukriti to, to really, I guess, take into, I mean, I guess there's mercy of devotees as well. But I guess this attachment, it just seems so, I don't know, it only because it's like through bhakti, we develop nishkama. Like we start, and vairagya, so it just doesn't seem like that's the spot, that's the thing that is really the adhikar to take to why you are attracted to different marks.
So this explanation is coming from Sri Vishwanath's commentary on this particular verse, 11:29. So you can go check it out there. But he says we should consider that the causes of each of these, the adhikar for each of these paths are in terms of their attachment. So if you have attachment to matter due to beginningless ignorance, and he says you have adhikar for karma yoga, that's how he explains it. If you have detachment from matter due to being purified, your antakarna being purified by nishkama karma yoga, then you have adhikar for gyan marg. And the adhikar for bhakti is itself shraddha, which is caused by devotees. That is a singular cause, basically. You can say bhakti sukriti, but even that bhakti sukriti has come from previous sadhu sangha. In some form, you heard a kirtan, some class, you saw a deity worship. So it's come from previous sadhu sangha. So the cause of bhakti is sadhu sangha. They give shraddha. And as a sort of corollary, secondary characteristic, it says you're not too detached and not too attached. So in this way, he wants to discuss the adhikars in terms of what's going on with the inner world in terms of attachment or detachment. That's how he chooses to discuss a particular subject matter. So it's just another way of looking at the subject matter. So you have beginningless ignorance, or you're attached to matter, so you have adhikar for this. If you're detached from matter because you've been purified in Nishkama Karma Yoga, then you're qualified for this. If you're not too attached, not too detached, you must have got sadhu sangha, you must have awakened shraddha and harikatha, then you qualify for this. So that's how he just chooses this. Yeah. There's just another angle where he chooses to speak about it. Yes, you can also quote that verse. Awesome. I hope that helps. So you can go check out his commentary there. It also comes in BRS where he discusses it. This is 1, 2, I want to say 15. Anyway, it's around there. Go check it out. 15, 16, 17, yeah.
So I have a few questions. Okay, bring it back to the very beginning of class. Can you reconcile again how the Atmarama is near Granta, meaning they don't need books and they've realized the truth, but then yet the highest knowledge or purpose is revealed through Shastra?
Hey, sorry, that hey was for someone here in the room. Yeah. So Amarama Shimanayan Granta Apiyarukrama. So the highest knowledge revealed in Shastra is reality, right? Vednyam Vasama Matra Vastu Shivana. This is Srimad Bhagavatam, of course. So what is reality? On the lowest, the lowest level of truly abiding reality is the jiva. He's the smallest unit of irreducible being. And then, of course, at the highest level is God. So once Shastra has done its work of revealing reality to you, then you're not beholden, what's the word, obliged to the edicts of scripture, because they've served their purpose. They serve the purpose of revealing reality to you. So that is the meaning there.
Okay, so that is what you mean is basically one does need to follow Shastra, then one becomes Atmarama, and at that point, all the truth is revealed. Okay, that's what I thought, and I clarify that. Okay, perfect. And then lastly, it's just very funny because I guess when you talked about your friend who had said that you really don't need church, guru, all of that, I guess to connect with God.
Just go within. Yeah, just go within.
And I hear that a lot, and that is obviously very different from what we are taught or learned, right? We need, in one sense, external sources like Shastra, the guru for guidance. And there, of course, there's a whole nother, you can call it spiritual community that's very like you, your intuition. Your intuition is your biggest guidance. And whether I know, or when we're not going to know, the voice that they're hearing is actually, say, Paramatma or some sort of fear or desire, of course, and that's the reason why, in one sense, we need external guidance. When I ask how they know, there is no answer of, oh, the church, the guru. And for them, it's listening to the body. And the body doesn't.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I just comment because, and it's funny because the Sangha, like, obviously we're very, intellectual. So I very much stay in the mind, and it's very logical analysis, all of that. So tuning into body is somewhat new or different, but yet as you just hear how they process things, there is no external guru, church, none of that. It really is, how does this feel in my body? And that's my intuition revealing how, like, what's best and right for me. I'm curious to hear your thoughts.
I would just ask, can an intuition be off also? You may feel so many things in the body. If you take that as the pramana, your highest pramana, what I feel in the body, then that could be misleading, because we have a lot of feelings that can come up that can be distorted or misguide us also. As far as if someone was like telling me that, you cannot deny anyone their subjective experience of anything. So my sort of quip to this sort of statement was that if you say all you have to do is go within, then if I ask how to go within, then at that time we'll enter some guru, some book, some church, some priest. They enter at that time when you're trying to investigate that question. So my point in saying that is that it is very natural that we look for guidance when we're in ignorance. If your starting point is ignorance, it is only natural that you look for someone who's got enlightenment to share. If I'm ignorant of calculus, I go to a calculus teacher. It's very natural. I don't want to do away with the calculus teacher. At the same time, the calculus teacher should see to it that I also realize calculus for myself. But that doesn't mean I do away with the teacher. So I feel like because people are fried with teachers, because for good reasons in the age of Kali, they're throwing the baby out with the bathwater. So I just want to point out that no, whenever you have to investigate these deeper questions, if you're investigating it from the platform of ignorance, because you just don't know, that at that time, that is when the special literature, the church, the priest, the guru, that's when they enter at that point. And then hopefully you get something substantial for them so you can realize it for yourself. And as far as realizing for yourself, Prabhupada would also say, no one can tell you that. And just like when you're eating some food, then at that time, you know exactly when you are full. No one has to tell you, you know by direct experience. So it's not that everything is dependent on a guru. But because your ignorance is there, you need some enlightenment. Then they give you enlightenment about how to go inside. If you follow that, then you can see for yourself if you're going inside or not. Even if they give the answer, I say, how do you go inside? So they're going to tell me, you have to feel it in your body. So they're acting as guru practically. I may not call them as guru, but they're practically guru. They're giving instruction. And I'm taking that instruction seriously. And then I'm getting some experience for myself, the bodily tingling or whatever's going on there. So, okay, if you say if that is sufficient for you, for your Atma Suprasiditi, then we say congratulations. There is no need for us to be envious of that. If you achieve Atma Suprasiditi through the tingling sensation of the body, which you heard from your guru, who told you like that, then we also say bravo to that. Why we should be unhappy that someone has achieved Atma Suprasiditi? We should rather say bravo. Very happy. I don't trust that method of bodily tingling, so my journey will continue. But if you have achieved it, then congratulations. Very good, very good. But hopefully we don't see you in the news next month, having had a cookie after being enlightened. So this has been happening a lot. This is why people have lost faith in gurus and so on. The guru talks many things, in Hare Krishna movement or otherwise. Then they eat the cookie afterwards. So that's why I always say, if you're a teacher, like I do some teaching, so I just let everyone know in the beginning, I do like cookies. So if in the future you see me eating one, don't find fault. I already told you. But I also have some knowledge, but I'm still in the process of, trying to discover that Atma Suprasiditi. So that's how I would that's how I would engage with it. If someone has honestly said they've achieved some enlightenment by that, then I say bravo. I have no reason to deny them that just because they haven't followed my method or something like that. At the end of the day, we want all of entities to be happy. And that, as we heard in 6th canto we studied, that is the imperishable principle. The imperishable dharma is that when others are happy, we are happy. And when others are distressed, we are distressed. This is the imperishable dharma. So if someone has said, I've gotten happy through this, then we say, okay, there's no protest. Although, we may have our doubts and make fun of it on the side. That is just because of our own. I was in Kali. I was in Kali a couple of years ago. And there was this one girl, lady. I don't even know if I should say this. But there was this one lady, she was talking to Sham Sundari. And she was explaining to her that we were in the Yoga Sutras discussion period of the yoga teacher training. So she was learning about samadhi and all these things. So she was telling the Sham Sundari that when she has sex with her partner, she enters into samadhi. So Sham Sundari, we were like laughing for like 20 minutes because it sounded funny to us. But at the end of the day, if she's really understanding what samadhi actually is, and she thinks that is it, then we have no protest to that also. Jaya, congratulations. You found the easy method into samadhi. I'm going to take this other path that I feel might be a little bit more authentic. Well, we will not deny you that, at least not to your face. Of course, we may have our doubts about it. That's how I would, that's my thoughts on it. I don't know.
Thank you so much, Jay.
Yeah, but we should be happy. If others are happy, then there is no protest. Even if they're happy doing sense gratification, they say, I'm happy. Okay. Why we should protest that? Then when they are unhappy, that's time we come back and say, take this book. Okay, Gail, if you want to say the last thing, Karen, then we'll finish.
Well, I was just wondering, that person who left, I guess, Krishna consciousness for his Catholic wife, how come that doesn't mean that he didn't have the adhikari? Because
no,
he
did have adhikar. That was my point. He had adhikar, but he didn't apply his will to that. That was the point I was making.
Yeah, but this is my question, though. How to distinguish between a lack of will and a lack of adhikari? That's my question, actually.
How to distinguish between a lack of will and a lack of adhikar.
Because in his case, right, the fact that he was more attached to the marriage, I don't know why that doesn't mean that he lacked adhikari.
No, yeah, that was what I was saying in the class. I wasn't saying that he lacked adhikar because he was attached to the marriage.
I know, I'm saying that.
Oh, you're saying that. Okay, so I'm clarifying. So you're saying because he was attached to the marriage, that is an indication that he lacked adhikar.
Possibly, I'm wondering.
You're wondering about that.
Yes.
So anyway, what I'm the only way I can answer this right now, intuitively, well, based on Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he describes that when Shraddha appears, it is like a newborn baby girl. Because Shraddha is feminine. So he's like, it's like a newborn baby girl. So if you have a newborn baby girl, you have to protect it quite rigorously. So Shraddha means Shraddha is the adhikar for bhakti, right? So it is like a newborn baby girl. So you have to protect it vigorously, especially in the beginning stages. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, actually, he's saying you should sow it in your heart. You should water it with a sufficient amount of Shraddha and Kirtan. That means feeding the Shraddha. And then you should put a fence around it so that other creatures can't come in and eat it. So you have to, newborn baby girl, you have to protect it. So you got some adhikar, but if you don't feed the baby and you don't protect it from dangerous elements, then it may become, I don't want to say die, because bhakti cannot die, but it can become covered over. So I say that he had adhikar because he was coming. He had faith in the topics of Krishna. He was accepting Krishna as a true reality. He was accepting Krishna Katha as truth that can transform his life. He started bhakti practices. He started offering things to Krishna. Who will offer something to Krishna without some adhikar Shraddha? Who will do it? Hardly no one will offer things to Krishna without some Shraddha. So that means Shraddha was there. But because of Niyamagraha, hanging on to the status quo of, marriage life, the reason that example is funny because people like, you say he should have left his marriage? I mean, my answer is yes, absolutely. But maybe he's already left it for other sense gratificatory reasons. In any case.
Yeah, you see, that's the thing, if he had left the marriage, he might have been so filled with misgivings, anxiety, So that's
maybe we don't know. Maybe we don't know. But the point is that Shraddha has to be nourished by sufficient amount of Shraddha and Kirtan and by protecting on all sides. So if that doesn't happen, if we don't apply our will to feeding the baby and to protecting it from all sides, then it can become lost or covered over. So that's what we're saying. Mm-hmm. So that happened. He didn't apply his will to continuing the feed. He could have just said, yeah, baby, whatever you say. And then continue to hear, continue to chat, go to the park. Yeah, I'm going for a walk, sweetie. I'll be back in an hour. I'm going to chant Jaffa or whatever. But he didn't continue to feed it. So the baby girl got weak and she became lost like this. So that's a good question, though. I'll have to sit with it a little bit longer. It's kind of subtle. How do you distinguish between will and adhikar? Because then the point is coming up. If I had adhikar, then I will apply it myself. That is the
yes.
I was trying to give the example with the deadlifts. So adhikar means you can work up to a certain point, but you don't do it. So I can lift 250 pounds, but sometimes I just do 150 instead. It's a little easier. I feel a little lazy. Although I can lift up to 250, I don't do it. So why don't I do it? So this is also covered in the first verse of Mana Shiksha, Atitanam Kuru. You really have to apply yourself rigorously. There is prayasa there in bhakti because we're still dealing with the strong anartha of beginningless bondage to matter. So when you have to come out of that, there's still a lot of prayasa that has to be there. So even though you have adhikar for something, you can do something, but now you have to really apply the prayasa is there. So I don't have any, I have to sit with it. It's a little bit of a subtle question.
Maybe it's a matter of sincerity. You have to be able to understand yourself well enough, maybe to know, how much you're ready to give in terms of nourishing.
Definitely there's some, honestly, even the sincerity point, the sincerity, we should analyze that also, look within our hearts and so on. But especially in the beginning, at all stages of bhakti, but especially in the beginning stages, we basically have no strength outside of the sangha that we keep. That is we're like crystal. So the crystal will take on the quality of whatever it's around. So if it's around red, it will become red. Redness will enter into the crystal. It's called the upadi of the crystal. So we need to keep ourselves around the sort of shakti in the beginning in the form of sadhu sangha, even if they're neophyte devotees. Their chanting is like that, a little bit, but still, a little Sarv Shakti is coming, and that helps to hold that quality in our souls, which is like a crystal. And when we don't do that, then we're like impoverished, basically. So, yeah, all these images you try to put together, I also sit with it. It's a little subtle question. All right, Siddha wants to say something. We'll finish after this. Actually, we'll finish now. Do you want to? What do you want to ask?
Question regarding this.
All right, Siddha wants to say something on this.
So I was wondering that we're now in verse number 2 of Manashiksha, since there are 11 verses, 12?
It's 12 total,
12 verses.
11 instructive.
So now, are they sequential in the sense that the one has to perfect the first one and then like a ladder, or is that something like these are 11 meditations, one can read any of those and perfect them?
From the commentaries, they look like they're sequential. So it seems it's a sequence. Of course, in the first verse, he says one should give up pride. But in the 7th verse, he's speaking about pratishtha. So obviously, the giving up of pride is only the beginning. That has to evolve all the way up to the point of the abandonment of pratishtha, which is the 7th verse. So it's presented like a sequence of development and the bhajan, overcoming obstacles in 4 through 7, and then absorption and Swarupa Vesh in the last verses. So there's a sequence of development and bhajan they presented here. All right, fam, we're gonna stop here. Tat Sat. Srila Raghunath Das Goswami ki jai, Shrimad Shiksha ki jai, Shri Prabhupada ki jai, Go Nandi, Hari Hari Bo, Unsculpted Shakti, Later, fam. Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Hari Bo.